Hey everybody, I am Dr. Matt and I'm joined by my good friend, Dr. Tommy John. And we're going to be talking, this is, by the way, the South Denver Health Expert Podcast. And the whole goal behind this is I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to health. And today you're going to get an idea of just some outside the box thinking when it comes to health in general. But I think that, especially in our community in Denver, there's a lot of options. But a lot of these options are very similar in their approach and their methodology and what they're trying to get for the client or the patient. And I don't know if that's always the best thing for us. I think we should be striving for more. And I think ultimately you need to understand what options are out there and what true health really is about. So I've taken it upon myself to start interviewing some experts, some in Denver, some not, and hopefully get you guys some ideas, some other thoughts on how you can get the health that you're after. So today, again, my good friend Dr. Tommy John just got done writing his first book, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about health. And if you've got questions, by all means, comment below. I've got my computer set up here. We're going to see how that works. So if you've got comments, we'd be happy to answer those questions or comments. Okay? So first off, tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you end up in San Diego?
Oh man, so having been in the rehab, performance, and healing environment for about 19 years, playing college, playing professional baseball for a couple years, and then dabbling in sports performance and being exposed to, you can read about certain things, but then actually seeing it clinically is something completely different, right? So the group of gentlemen in Illinois I was with, they challenged the dogma, they challenged the norm, and it was a lot of those things that I had learned in school that now we were doing the opposite, and the results were better. Okay. And so I was blown away because I'm a why guy. You're a why guy. Like, why does that happen? And we'll sit here and like furl our eyebrows and take apart something instead of just looking at it for face value, right? Especially each person is completely different. Like, that's the puzzle and the fascinating thing about our day-to-day is that not everybody's the same. There's no system. The box is the person. They are the box. Like, us being confined into a box is kind of a scary thing. So challenging that for many years, going and finding the literature and the research that exists to prove the outlier, the not so traditional way, and then you see why that stuff became not traditional, usually monetary, usually, there's a business behind it. And so
almost always.
You follow the money and you're going to see where the source of a lot of this split is,
okay. So not to cut you off, but just go beginning from square one.
Yeah.
I mean, your name's Tommy John. Your dad's name's Tommy John. Many people are familiar with the underwear.
Right.
My mom thinks the underwear is your underwear.
Right.
That's not you.
No.
Okay. But the Tommy John surgery, which a lot of other people are familiar with, that is you.
Right.
That's your father. So how did tell me a little bit about Tommy John surgery. How did that become the name?
So the Tommy John surgery was there's a little ligament on the inside of your elbow that when it breaks apart or tears, they replace a ligament, which ligaments hold bones to bones. They take a tendon from the other hand or hamstring or a cadaver, and they drill two holes in these bones, and then they loop it through like a figure eight, and then your body has to adapt to using a tendon as a ligament.
Gotcha.
He was the first to have it in the throwing arm.
He was a major league pitcher.
He was a major league pitcher for 11 seasons. He had a full career. His first kid was 2 weeks from being born. Like, this was this like huge crossroads in his life. For him to even attempt an experimental surgery just blows my mind. And the doctor gave him a 1% chance of success because it had never been done before. 1% chance. And I joke because I think we've all seen Dumb and Dumber when Lloyd Christmas goes to marry Swanson, Samsonite, that she gives him a 1 in a million chance. And he goes, so you're telling me there's a chance? Like, that was my dad. My dad was the original Lloyd Christmas. That's where they stole it from, actually. Not true, but so that's where we go. But again, he almost had to be up against that. Previously, it had been done in polio patients' ankles, just to tighten their ankles, but never the wear and tear and demand that a major league pitcher was going to have on his throwing arm.
At the height of his career.
At the height, it was done. Even Dr. Joe was like, this surgery is done so you can play with your kids, open doors. I don't think you can pitch again. And my dad's like, just tell me, is there any possibility that I could throw a ball again and pitch? And Joe, being real, instead of it just being absolutely not, he's like, I mean, it's possible, probable, no. Like 1%. And my dad's like, done, got it, done. That's all I needed. Fast forward 14 seasons he pitched without missing a start because of his elbow. 14 years. He's the most successful Tommy John surgery. They named it after him because he was so successful, and it was such a mouthful. It was the ulnar-collateral ligament replacement using the palmaris longus tendon. Dr. Job stopped saying that, so he goes, the one I did on TJ, the Tommy John surgery. And then it just locked in. Well, now we're seeing it being used, you know. And I think one of the reasons it was so successful, there was minimal doctor involvement. Dr. Job goes, listen, TJ, we have no idea what we're about to do here. How humble and
Right.
like open is a doctor to be able to say, I'm sure you say like, look, I'm following you on this, like to your patients, right? Like I'm just helping you. I don't really know what's about to happen.
Everybody's different.
How do we know? Every time we
Right.
see you, it's going to be a completely different thing. That there was no box to put the surgery candidate into. And he said this to him, listen, along this process, you're going to have to listen to your body on this one. We're following you. How brilliant is that in the medical health, performance, healing world for us to follow the individual's innate and connecting back to themselves again? And that was what my dad did to be successful for 14 years.
That's
and
cool.
like blew it off. Pitched 26 total seasons in the big leagues.
So you got to watch that example. You saw how he led his career, lived his life, and you started off as just personal training, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and that was in Illinois.
Yep.
And then started to evolve and decided ultimately to go to chiropractic school, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
First class I think we had together was orientation.
I know.
Okay, so anyways, what took you from being a personal trainer to deciding you're a chiropractor?
Well, and I got to give credit to my colleague and really good friend Vladimir Chirguz. When we were trainers, so to speak, and now I use that word loosely because I don't even know what it means anymore in this country, but when we were trainers, I didn't want to be another dime a dozen. I witnessed him, and he knew every system. He knew all systems combined, hormonally, circulation, respiratory, central nervous system, nutrition. He knew recovery, injuries, and he was just a trainer. And I'm like, where are you getting all this stuff from? Because I like to work with people. I was fit, and that's really the qualifications for a trainer now.
Yeah.
You're just somewhat charismatic, and you're fairly fit. And okay, great. There's your stamp. There's your certification, because you really just need a heartbeat to get certified in this country, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of tough. But where he's from, Serbia, Belgrade, like over there, the strength and conditioning professional knows all systems. The orthopedics going to the strength and conditioning professional to ask them questions
That's cool.
on what to do. They do the surgery, and then they go over here. There's no real division between, oh, it's rehab over here, it's performance over here, down the hall is metabolic, and then there's recovery in this room. No, it's training is training is training. I had never been exposed to that. It was attractive to me, and I wanted to be that. And so I started to ask him where he was getting a lot of his information from. And I have a big sheet of websites that I follow. And I was just pulling apart the information and challenging that information in there. And then fast forward, 10 years of that, then I realized there was a higher order to what we were doing. It was everybody that we were working with in rehab, from anywhere from 6 to 9 years old to 99 years old with MS, osteoporosis, and diabetes. And it was just insane how much better the patient, with what we were doing, when they saw our chiropractor, who came once a week because he was located downtown Chicago. We were in the northern suburbs. And me being very detail-oriented, I saw how effective our approach was, but when they saw him, after that, I was like, wait a second, something's different. You changed something in the office, I want to know what it is. And when I asked him, he couldn't really tell me specifically. He couldn't answer my questions, and my questions were feverish and detailed, and I wanted to know, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then he's just like, I don't know, I did this, and this. But he didn't know how to link it all. He didn't know how to take nervous system, which is what he was working with, just connecting body to brain to body, and keeping that connection open.
Right.
He didn't know then the training, nutrition, like all the stuff that we had out here. What if we had somebody that would bridge the two? And that's when I'm like, screw it, I'm going to school. And I went back to school at 32 years old, closed my baseball business, closed my performance business, rented my house, like went back on a feeling.
Yeah.
And it was, again, just adding into this amazing concept that we all have already, which was I wanted to go to the top of the food chain, which was the central nervous system, and affect that, and then work. So if it was the main power to the house, I had all the rooms covered, so to speak.
Yeah.
I wanted that main power turned on, so now I could cut out the middleman. I didn't like that our people were going to 3 or 4 different and losing translation in health, because there was a message that was different coming from all the professionals. Sadly, it should be kind of the same message.
Correct.
You know?
Correct. I agree, and I think that's why I like it, because you got the idea that everything is connected.
Right.
And we don't need specialists so much as we just need to have a complete understanding of this
Right.
body. Okay, so now you moved to you're practicing in what is this, Sorrento Valley?
Sorrento Valley.
Okay,
yeah.
which is just north of San Diego.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful area if you've never been. And you've been here for 2-3 years?
3.5. It'll be 4 in August.
Okay, so 3.5 years, and in that time period, I mean, I've watched you take it from the ground up.
Yeah.
And you also decided at this point you're going to start writing a book. And tell the reader what the book is about, and then we're going to get into some more details on what they can utilize.
Sure. So the book's called Minimize Injury, Maximize Performance, A Sports Parent's Survival Guide. It came from me talking to an executive editor, running her ideas, my ideas by her for a survival guide for our parents.
For the adults.
The 50 plus.
Which really need it.
Right.
Everybody
and
needs it.
That's what I was really passionate about, were the people that had written all them off. Because if you're 50 plus and you have anything, medicate, therapy, pools, out, and keep quiet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, that's what it was. And I'm like, that sucks, because that should be when you could continue to thrive, even as long as you're alive. My gosh, what a great thing, going to the next realm of wherever you believe we're going to go when we pass away, and high, like on your terms, so to speak. You know, and it bothered me. And so that's where my passion was. She said, it'll be hard to break through with a first book like that. Could you write a sports manual for youth sports parents? Because unfortunately, there's youth sports injury epidemics in all sports. You know, the kids are suffering in all sports.
Right.
And so that's where I can only help who come through my door, who call me on the phone, who talk to me. Mm-hmm. The book was an extension of the principles that I do in here. It is not a system, and I'm very clear on that. It's not this, if I check the boxes, I'm going to magically be spit on the other end, right? Like, we got to put all the boxes together, and if they're principles, you make them into your own for your family's sake or your athlete or wherever you're at.
Correct.
And it was just an extension of what goes on in my office now, to put the power back where it belongs to solve this whole thing, which is in the parents' hands.
I like your, this is why I like you,
Yeah.
because we're not talking about treatments,
Right.
which I think is 99.9% of all healthcare.
Right.
And it is what it is. Not to say
Right.
there isn't benefit there, because I'm sure there is, but at
Right.
the same time, the principles are what's important in this. And like my office, for example, we set it up with these requirements. We call them requirements, but
Yeah.
the principles to
Sure.
being healthy. And one of them, a huge one, is movement.
Right.
And most people just are not getting proper movement.
Right.
And I was one of those people as well, playing basketball throughout my life. College basketball led me to the point where I am today. I think most people think of sport, exercise as making you healthy.
Right.
And you're one of the first people to sit me down and tell me, you know what, dude, that's not health.
Right.
And it took me a long time to really come to understanding. I think I understood it, but to really drive it home and to say, okay, I got to start changing things. Totally different idea.
Sure.
And hard to accept, because
Right.
the majority of America doesn't talk like that. So tell me, why is sport not all exercise? Why is it not all healthy?
Right. So sports are an expression of things that we've done that lead up to that. It's like we've done all this work, we've done all this preparation, we've like tilled the garden, we're growing. Now, like, the sport is you eating the meal of the fruits you grew. You know, we're in this, and positive, and they're amazing, and competitive spirit, and teamwork, and the social engagement, like, and goal setting. Sports are amazing to an extent, but amazing to the person prepared for sport.
Right.
Having worked in athletics and having been an athlete, it's very much a tearing down process. Like, that event of playing a sport is a breaking down. You don't go to that event to heal. You go to that event to express all the work you've done, and then you come back and you do the work to heal yourself, to go back to be able to compete again. But this whole competition and training, that needs to just stop. Like, babies weren't like looking at other babies like, I'm gonna beat that baby's ass and I'm gonna crawl to that thing. And they are so like internally guided, but we miss that where we have Fitbits, and the only reason I'm gonna walk is to compete with you because you're down the road, and I'm gonna, instead of walking for the benefits of walking internally, like what does it give you? Does it spring up for creativity? It pumps your sacrum. You feel good. You're enlivened. Like, that's where we got to get back into.
Right.
If you think about sports and the human being being built as a pyramid, sports are like the top little section up top. Fun, amazing, the most enjoyable part, but then that whole big two bases down below takes some time to develop.
Yeah.
And that if we just treat them as expressions of the work we've done to lead up to that, great, just leave them there. And some of these kind of training methods where we compete, just call them sports and we'll leave them over there. So again, are people playing football to heal? Nah, the NFL. I'm having to get people from the NFL to make it so that they don't drive a car in oncoming traffic. You know what I mean? Or OD on opioids, and we could get into some really gnarly stuff.
Yeah.
You know, at the professional level especially, but unfortunately, sports are being geared around like professional in kids, and we just can't do it.
Just not to change subject, but we could go so many ways.
Yeah.
We were on the beach yesterday for a good 2 hours, which is why my face looked bright red.
Show them your feet.
Yeah, right. So anyways, we were at the beach and talking about, our topics range from all over the place, and we could go down each one, but I'm interested to hear your perspective, because I do a lot of talks on concussions.
Yeah.
In terms of how it affects the nervous system.
Right.
I do it to different sports teams and programs. The one sport, hockey's been very willing to bring it in, soccer too. The one sport that isn't is football.
Right.
And not to say that you're focusing on concussion, but in terms of what your approach, because it's outside the box. We're sitting here talking about how overdoing it in a sport is not necessarily healthy.
Right.
Which is the opposite of what every coach and trainer is going to tell you.
Right.
How do you get these people to buy into this approach when it's completely countercultural?
In general, you mean for across the board?
Yeah, any sport. Pick a sport.
So that's the thing. So, like in the book, it's rethink, replenish, rebuild, recover. The first step to solving this is to rethink this whole approach.
Right.
I need people, and I have them do it on day one. I don't know, like they'll come in and they love listing all the things they've been doing, all the people that are involved, all the therapists, the coaches, like they have just this team of people. So what brings you in today? XYZ hurts, or I'm sick and I've got, okay, then I need you to admit that what you've been doing, does it seem to be working? You know what I mean? And not even being sarcastic, but they kind of laugh and they're like, well, no. Okay, fine. Now we can begin. If they can't admit that, then everything I'm about to say, which is probably the opposite.
It's going to be hard to accept, for sure.
Even if I was not even in health, but I was just kind of like a curious human, you've been doing this and it's not working. What if we just did the opposite of all that? And that was literally some of my pulling this approach apart was, okay, that seems to not be working. What if I just went polar end over here? Mm-hmm. Just total opposite, committed. Let's just see what happens. Turns out it ends up being kind of the way, but it's very hard to make money on that way. You know what I mean? And so that's why I get people to understand that we need to rethink the whole approach to sports in this country. And until we can answer this question, no, we won't make any change. And that is this working? Mm-hmm. Does it seem like it's working? We've got concussions that are out of control, pediatric ACLs, Tommy John surgeries, stress fractures in spines. Now we got...
And those are in the young kids.
Those are in kids. Now we got humans, like across the board, being medicated for anxiety and depression due to their inability to perform, or traumas, and we got opioid addiction. Like, does it seem like it's working? If we just stayed in sport, the whole model's not working. I mean, we could get into so many things, right?
Absolutely.
Does it seem to be working? And until they're like, no, okay, because the decisions you're going to have to make are going to have to be in the face of the majority. Mm-hmm. And the social norm, oh my gosh, the pressure you are about to get, you have to have a plan because they're coming at you.
Right.
The majority does not like the others swimming upstream.
No, I agree. And I think, and just being a chiropractor, I think that's been, it's just, it is what it is. And then we don't need to go into that political debate. But anyways, okay, let's go here, because I think an interesting topic from your book that I really enjoyed. Why does every injury come down to three major areas? And what are those three areas?
So that's so awesome. So the single reason for all injury. So when we were in chiropractic school, when everybody's in PT school, when they're in medical, when I've gone to medical conferences and they had me speak, and the slides, all the slides, there's like 63 to 147 slides for the presentation. You remember them for the different injuries, right?
Absolutely.
The first slide says, and it's like the first bullet, cells damaged due to force, or tissue damage due to force. Stop the slides right there. All the others don't even matter. Stop. What precedes that slide? It's the body's inability to absorb force. The tissue got damaged because we just couldn't absorb force. Something as small as stepping off a curb, or posture, or a seatbelt, or something as horrific as a car accident, or falling off a building, or getting hit, right? But the body gets damaged because it can't absorb force, period. So if we can get the force absorbers, which are muscles, the brain only has muscle to use to not only move the body, but to protect the body. If I slug you in the stomach, the brain's going to take all these calculations, speed of my object, force, direction. It'll fast forward into a memory of what's happened the last time that happened, instantaneous speed. And it will go ahead and it'll tighten that because it can't move the organs around. Right? It's too late. It'll think it would want you to move out of the way, but it realizes it's too soon. So it'll tighten that stomach to prevent force from going in and damaging organs. Bone. I don't even know if you know this. Like how much stronger is bone than concrete? Do you remember? It's like
bone than concrete.
Yeah, it's like 4 to 6. I don't know, but it's bone stronger than concrete. Muscle is the bodyguard to bone, dude. Like, that just blows me away that the muscle is the bodyguard for this thing that's stronger than concrete. So let's have some respect for what muscle is. Yeah. Not size, but the ability of the muscle to do its thing.
Right.
Okay? Absorb force. So now, and what controls the muscle?
Nervous system.
Boom! There we go. So now we start. Connect brain to body.
Right.
Get the muscles going, and now we have to reteach the body how to absorb force. Now what I found now it's coming on 19 years of pulling apart all these injuries, whatever you want to name them, again, it doesn't matter because the body doesn't heal on names. It just heals to the system and damage. Done. Okay? They come from inability to absorb force in these 3 areas, and it's across the board. Any human that I've gone from again, 9 years old to 90 plus. The feet, ankles, and calves, I say those as one unit because the calf is the foot. It's like all together, right? The foot, ankle, calf. That's first and foremost. The glute is the second, and it's interesting because the glute is tied to that foot, ankle, calf very intimately, or we hope it is. And then we sling up to the opposite, shoulder blades. And there's like 7 or 8 muscles that lock the shoulder blade because the shoulder blade is just hanging on the skeleton. It's not attached to anything. So it should just pop right off, but it's got these 8 really strong muscles and the coordination between those 3 areas. So then I started to pull apart. Because every injury is coming down to some sort of dysfunction along those little threads, what if I devise plans for everybody, even if they don't have an injury, or let's just say somebody comes in and isn't experiencing symptoms yet, because pain is the last thing to show up, first thing to go away. Right. So to drive something by pain doesn't really make a lot of sense, right?
Right.
So it's like, all right, what if I got everyone in a preventative mode? And that's what you'll see in here. And you've experienced a lot of that because I've given you some stuff.
Absolutely.
Do we focus on the hips, the feet, and the shoulder blades? You know we do. In extent.
That's it, yeah, absolutely.
So there's kind of a little secret window into, even if you're just curious about this, well, what do I do to the feet, ankle, calves, glutes, and shoulder blades? Don't even worry about it. Just move it. Just explore it. Don't even overthink it. Just move those areas, see what happens.
And listen, I am a huge proponent of what you do.
Yeah.
And I know the benefits myself just from fighting back from injuries that I've sustained through playing career. Now, I know there's a bunch of people that are going to be tuning into this that have their own stuff going on.
Yeah.
Pain, injuries, that kind of thing. So let's talk about this. What are warning signs that they should understand when they need to be dialing back whatever they're doing for training? Maybe it's Orange Theory, maybe it's a CrossFit gym,
sure.
Maybe it's something at home, or maybe it's a sport, tennis, golf, basketball. When should they know? What are some signs that they need to know when to dial this stuff back?
So again, symptoms are our body's way of telling us that stuff's either not right, like something's not right.
Yeah.
So if we get back, we want to feel. We want to feel because us being able to feel triggers an appropriate healing response, and we heal every day.
Yep.
Okay? So if we can't, try to avoid those things that mask feeling. If something goes in to hide a feeling, you want to watch out for that. You really want to feel. If you're constantly getting a feedback of pain in a certain area, that's a nice little fire alarm. That's a small warning. Usually a whisper.
Right.
It's like, hey, we're not right. Things aren't right now. If we listen to that and go in and try to address it in whatever that means, and then retest our sport or go back into our lives, or if we're doing pottery or we like hiking, or some people like painting and other things. Like, again, you need to be strong mover to be able to survive those.
Yeah. So
if we listen to that, there's always a precursor to every injury unless it's catastrophic, falling off a building or in a car accident. There's always a warning. Somebody's like, oh, blew my elbow, blew my knee. Any problems leading up before that? Oh, chronic sprained ankles, collapsed arches, I have orthotics, I've been taking all this stuff to hide the pain. My calves are always tight, my Achilles flared up, and it's like, and then all of a sudden the ligament can't. So the warning was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So again, if we just kind of listen ahead of time, body will tell you well ahead when stuff's not right or not ideal.
Yeah, I think it's challenging for people because these are not direct correlation.
Right.
Sometimes a symptom like an ankle sprain might precipitate something in the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to make that connection.
Yeah.
Because I'll talk to people and say, you got shoulder problems. Yeah, do you ever have any injuries? No, I had a couple ankle sprains back in the day, but nothing other than that.
Right.
And I think it's hard for them to make that jump.
Yeah.
So how do you go about educating people to understand that?
So I'll say, like, a lot of people will know, first of all, whenever they injured their shoulder, what were they doing? A lot of the times they were on their feet. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I'll have them like sit down and try to grapple with me. Or if they were in roller skates, would they be able to do something with their hands and arms as effectively? Or if you were wrestling somebody and you're barefoot on ice and they have skates, or what, you're not as strong when your footing's not there. So that's one of them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just getting an idea of, man, how involved is that lower part of my body to the upper, or the upper and the lower?
Absolutely.
When does it hurt? Like when you start moving your feet, or when you start moving your shoulder, does the ankle hurt? And when you start to make those connections, all of a sudden it's like, wow, the slightest little movement here totally triggered my big toe and they can feel that. They just have to be made aware of.
Right.
And we're tutors, right? So if we just help bring that. And now I've got people, if anybody's in fantasy anything, I'm not, but take Shohei Ohtani, the dude that came in from the Angels, the pitcher hitter from the Angels. First of all, he was signed.
The Japanese Babe Ruth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So his physical, he had partial tears in his elbow, in his ligament, which we all do. So that's kind of silly. Like we all have stuff. If we look deep enough, we're gonna find some stuff. But I go in and I'm like, all right, this isn't the first injury. Those ligaments don't just go. What was his first injury? And I did a simple Google search. Right ankle, I believe. Right ankle, horrifically exploded surgery, like 8 years ago. Jumps to opposite quad, 2 years after that, explosion, and then right elbow. So again, who in America is working on Shohei Ohtani's ankle and his quad? No, he just had Tommy John surgery. They're going to go in, they're going to give him the protocol, and it's going to be elbows, and shoulders.
Which comes back to the whole treatment approach.
Yeah.
Which, again, not to say that that's wrong,
right.
But just if we're really trying to be healthy,
right,
we've got to understand the principles behind this.
Right. And back to the fantasy thing though, but like if one of your players has like ankle sprain, be ready, be careful, especially if they're a foot athlete. There's athletes all the time, they'll have just spasmodic low back. Wait for it, shoulder and elbow are coming next. And now these people will know to draft by their injury history. This is the general public, not even in health and wellness, but they're starting to read now the whole picture. Oh, look at that, bing, 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 bing. First cause of all injury, body's inability to absorb force. Second, previous injury. So we have to kind of rehab like all the previous stuff, which we don't itemize everything. We're always dealing with stuff all the time forever, forever. So that's a part of the process. It's okay.
You just got to train.
Yeah, that's it. Just move.
And we're talking about, at the beginning of this, you were talking about the feeling piece,
where
we need to feel more.
Yeah.
Which, this is something that's a little bit off track, but but I think it's important. I have a lot of people come in and tell me about how great their shoes are because they don't feel it. It's like walking in a cloud. They don't feel anything really, or they have an orthotic that's amazing. And when I hear that, I feel like they're not making themselves better with that. Right. They're making themselves way worse because they are taking out that stimulation. and this is something, again, I had to go through myself.
Yeah.
Playing basketball in these shoes that literally numb the bottom of your feet. You can't feel anything at all.
Right.
The arches start to go away. Just understanding the whole revolution I had to have to get to the point where, to be honest with you, when you're walking and you feel things on the bottom of your feet, it might not be comfortable.
We were walking on rocks yesterday.
We were walking on rocks. It was miserable, but absolutely effective for your nervous system and for the muscles in your body. Talk about that for a minute.
So the feet specifically?
Yeah, talk about the feet.
So there's, on average, 4,000 nerve endings in the soles of our feet and our hands. Well, those nerve endings have to begin somewhere. And so when we start to toe the ground with the skin of our feet, you can stimulate areas of brain that are so huge. Well, those areas lie next to other areas. And when you start nourishing those areas, the others kind of catch on. You're just like lighting up brain area, which will help in so many areas. We don't even have to like measure it. Just it's going to happen.
That's the cognitive portion.
That's the intellect. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they're even dealing with mental health disorders by stimulating hands and feet in their patients from a more natural aspect. They call it earthing or whatever you want to call it. Just using your feet and hands, skin on object. And that will stimulate, and they'll get like a therapeutic relief that maybe they don't have to be medicated for, because they're seeing what a disaster psychiatric meds are on the minds of people. Sure. Is there an alternative?
Talk about the chain reaction from the feet. When you start to lose that proprioception from the foot, how that affects the rest of the muscles in the body.
Yeah, so if you take like the big toe, for instance, if that's locked and not moving as freely, or it's not as strong and supported, well, as I go to walk forward, if my gait is, the movement of my gait is off a couple degrees, and it's new because it locked down symptom-wise, right? It'll affect the next joint up, the ankle. If the ankle goes into lock, it's going to affect the next joint up, the knee. And if that goes in, and it's like minute, man. Like we can't even understand this. So just let the body do its thing. But it's a really good being to adapt. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care if you get there upright, laying on your side, rolling over, backwards. It's going to get you to your goal, however it is, but it's going to survive. Mm-hmm. And so if it senses this immobility and this poor ability to move, like neuromotor immaturity is what I call it, it'll lock, and have you keep going to try to spread it out as long as possible. It's almost like metastasizing poor movement. Yeah. And it'll spread it through the body. And first exchange of force, as long as we have legs, is our feet, and then up the chain. So I always check nervous system top down. That's how we were created.
That's how we do it too.
Train bottom up.
Yep.
Kind of a cool approach. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, makes sense. So in terms of knee. Yeah. You just raise it. We don't need to spend tons of time, but there's a ton of people out there dealing with knee problems. Yeah. And I don't know if we've ever had this conversation, you and me, but in terms of the knee's kind of in the middle of the leg. Yeah. Right? So it really shouldn't have problems. Right. I mean, it just does its job as long as the top and the bottom are doing okay, correct?
Right.
So somebody has knee pain. What's the point, what's the sense in simply treating knee pain instead of paying attention to what's going on above and below that joint?
Right, so again, if we just go into the knee, there's many avenues to lower pain. Mm-hmm. Many. And now professions are swaying that way, that were once pure but are now going into symptom reduction.
Heat, ultrasound,
just
laser.
However you got to do it, don't feel.
Yeah.
Just if I can get you to not feel your knee, somehow I'm a wizard. And you're going to keep coming back. It's this management of pain.
Which is a problem in its own right, because pain is a hell of a motivator.
It's a marker, man.
It lets you know what's going on. So why would you want to reduce that and then promote more of the problem?
Right, and that's what's hard, is that the level of pain that the brain senses is appropriate, and it creates is appropriate to the level of healing responsible. Yeah. So if it's big, or interpreted by you as big, there's going to be a bigger healing response as long as you can feel that. Sadly, those methods should be used for this extreme down the line case. Do you know what I mean? Right. The people that are like almost suicidal because it hurts so bad, or they're like on their last 3 years, just make them comfortable. But we, of course, have taken that and watered it down to the 20-year-olds, watered it down to the 10 and 12-year-olds. And now we're seeing that the $35 billion industry of pain management, and it's only going to get worse, is you can only do it for so long, right? Yeah. You can keep the fire alarms out of the house, but you're sitting in a burning building. Yeah. So again, going in and treating a knee, without looking up and down. Yeah, you're only going to buy yourself time, which as a pro athlete or an athlete or whatever, okay, it bought you the games coming up, cool. But then as soon as those games are over, you're back to being a human athlete who's not just like doing this for a sport, or maybe you have to provide for your family. Cool. That you have to be physical to provide. But then as soon as you're done competing or performing, you're over here and you're doing massive amounts of work in all those other rooms to provide for that and eventually heal.
And that goes in, and we've had this conversation, but stem cell, which is now turning into an alternative as opposed to surgery, which it's less invasive, not as much of a immediate problem afterwards if things go wrong. Talk a little bit about stem cell and what your approach is to that.
So again, if we're going into a site, joints damaged, stem cells are going to help trigger a growth response, a healing response. The body was doing okay on its own, that's why it hurts. Yeah. And that's why it's swollen and locked up. So if we listen to that as less of a nuisance and more of as a clue, like, oh, that's awesome. You're hurting? Oh, you're healing. This is great. That's how I phrase it, right? Yeah. Look at how swollen that is. Dude, you're healing like crazy.
How do people look at you?
Well, they furrow their eyebrows, and then they like look around and like touch me to make sure I'm real and I'm not this like hologram of craziness. But I'll literally keep going on that. Like, that is amazing. I know you're uncomfortable, and I know it. Try to stay with this. That is triggering healing. If we go in with stem cells, and I had athletes that were going out of this country to get stem cell work before it was legal, whenever that was. And I was like, guys, but these were highly paid millionaires trying to play on a Monday.
There's a difference, right? There's a difference with this. Yeah, if your livelihood depends on it.
And you need an instantaneous change where you're breaking every rule of nature possible, fine, you go do it, but under the knowledge that, all right, I kind of just cut in line. I'm gonna have to pay out. I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna have to serve my time. Do you know what I mean? You're just gonna have to understand that. If that's a choice, that's great, but not a lot of people know that choice. Well, here's the thing. If I instantaneously create some sort of outside-in healing response to a joint that's taken 16 years to become this way, and I make a change within a month, the rest of the body had to adapt to that 16 years to get this way. If you make a change at site, which was the last thing on the market, right? It was the last string, boom, that's where it hurts. And you make a change, what's going to happen to the rest of the body? It's going to have to fight. Now you're talking, if it was a joint, the other joints, if it's the spine, oh my gosh, it's spine, joint, and then on down. But the guys delving out the stems. I had to tell somebody who was trying to get me on board with the stem cell stuff. I'm like, I'm sorry, it doesn't jive with the philosophy of my office. Good luck to you. But it was this big attractive, do you know how much money you can make, all this? And I'm like, I didn't even want to get into it. But again, they're not around when all the other stuff goes, or they are with, oh, that works so well. You want to know what we can do to the other joints? Yeah, another $6,000 a pop, and here we go. And again, until you run out of joints, and the person's just this big locked up, rigor mortis type lifestyle. It's like, well, we're literally as close to getting Wall-E as it is, like a recliner with a screen and a Slurpee, and just roll us down the road.
That's something we talked about, and we got a couple more questions, and I don't want to go forever today. We could
go 4 hours.
Yeah, we could do 4 hours. We need an intermission. But we had talked about, speaking of Wall-E and technology. I've been reading this interesting book called Sapiens. We chatted about it yesterday, I believe. Yeah. One of the things that he talks about, one of the ideas is that we didn't necessarily, in the Industrial Revolution, that was when we started to process grain and refine it. And his whole theory is we didn't really domesticate grain so much as grain domesticated us. Because back then it was a Middle Eastern crop. They grew it and it slowly spread across human civilization to the point where we decided, okay, this is easy. We should start growing this more and more. We'll have more time. Back then, humans hunted and gathered for 3 to 5 hours a day. The rest of the time, they were hanging around the campfire, gossiping, hanging out, which sounds like a great lifestyle.
Right.
But when we started growing grain, we thought, oh, it'd be even easier. The actual opposite happened. We started to have more kids, so then that was more people to support. So we had to grow more grain, more crops. People started getting sicker because it's not a natural thing for us to be living completely off grains. Right. And at this point now, we've expanded so much, so rapidly, to go back the other direction, almost impossible. We don't have enough food to feed everybody the way if we were going to hunt and gather again. Anyways, I guess the reason I went down that rabbit hole technology, the more we get, the more effed up you see our lifestyles become, and the more problems we create.
I think so.
And so I think talking about a minimalist lifestyle, something I never really appealed to me, to be honest with you.
Right.
I like nice cars, I like nice things.
Yeah.
But the more I research, the more I look into this, that ultimately is where the problems are starting.
Right.
And maybe not because of a Mercedes.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right. The idea of that, the principle of that.
Yeah. And I think you live that lifestyle pretty well.
I've grown to live this lifestyle, and it's just like drawn me in to where I like automation too. I like my car. I like having the freedom of my car, I like remote controls.
Yeah.
I like a blender every now and then. I like a washing machine. I like some of these things, but because the body grows through resistance, the system grows when it's resisted upon.
Yeah.
For every choice we make in luxury and automation, we just have to know that over here we have to do something to offset that in some way, whatever that means to you. Do you know what I mean? So some people will say, though, my whole life, I've got all this stuff. Alexa tells my kids when to go to bed, like all these things, like wait. And then they're going to try to train 3 times a week to offset all of that. And it's like, not going to work. Yeah. Like the majority of your day. So I try to tell people this: have the car, have the appliance, have the stuff, but some of the extra that's just so over the top, if you can try to avoid it, if you choose it, you just have to understand that you're going to have to pay in somewhere else.
And I think that's the proper approach, at least today. I mean, we can't do it any better, I don't think. Most people are going to say you're crazy or forget you anyway.
Or they'll say, Tommy, God, it must be exhausting living like you. And I'm like, is it? Like, so here's the thing. Any chance you get to be physical, jump at it. If you park in a parking lot, which space do you think would be the most ideal for the human to thrive in? The furthest away. Furthest away, right? Oh, I got to carry my bags. Even better. Yeah. Like, don't use a cart, or when you're on the cart, don't lean on the cart. Like, stand up. Take stairs. Avoid elevators. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Stand when you don't have to sit. If you're going to sit, lay on your stomach. Like, pick all these ways to kind of be physical.
Watch it, like my son Braxton, almost 2 years old. If I just did everything Braxton does right now, I think that'd be I mean, it's just tiresome even watching it, but it's the right idea.
Right.
What do you think about people that sit at desks all day? What do they do to counter that stress?
So again, this sitting was the new smoking. It's this whole thing, right? Pressure in a muscle inhibits it and shuts it off. If pressure is consistent enough, we're going to shut off the biggest muscle that we're sitting on, which is the glutes, right? And those are tied to the feet. So that's one of the things besides cardiovascularly, all the studies that'll go. So then we try to leave it to us to try to make this toxic, crazy-ass environment healthy. A stand-up desk. Or
I get a lot of
that we're
just
not supposed to be behind a desk. Do you know what I mean? So then it's like, dude, I provide for my family behind a desk. Okay. Then you're not going to quit, or you might be thinking about it, but it might be a 5-year plan with the whole family that Dad's going to get out of this because we're going to spend, or Mom's going to get out of this because, okay? So if you're at a desk, here's the agreement you have to make with your system. Every 30 to 50 minutes, on cue, 5 to 10 minutes of movement. And you just have, most of my clients who have it have an alarm. The healthiest clients who have desk stuff have an alarm, and they have it, and they'll go into the stairwell, or they go, because movement, you don't need a gym, you're just moving, right? So they'll get up from their desk, assuming they're not in the middle of a call or whatever, and they'll go ahead and knock out movement. 8 to 10 hour day, that's 40 to 50, 100 minutes of movement a day. And then when you get home, you do take a walk with the family after dinner, or you have your outlet, or you go for a walk, whatever it's going to be. Now all of a sudden the work week, it didn't compound like the supersize extra fries. Like, you're compounding now over the year. Damn, and you have no gym membership. You just made your office a gym. Holy cow, how innovative. That's the only way to survive a desk. There's no seat, there's no chair, there's no desk.
I agree with that, 100%. And I also think in terms of your productivity, sitting is draining your brain. Movement is where your brain gets the nutrition and energy.
Right.
So the more you're doing those 5-minute breaks, the more productive you are. Knock that workout a lot faster.
Absolutely.
Okay, enough on that. Last question I want to ask you in terms of what we're talking about. Why does the diagnosis, say you go to the orthopedic and you get a diagnosis of meniscus tear or degeneration, grade 3, whatever, why does the diagnosis not matter?
Because again, the body doesn't know what that is. Like the brain doesn't know that it's a meniscus tear or that it's a slap lesion or that it's MS. It doesn't know that. It's just trying to level the imbalance. It's just trying to adapt to the imbalance and bring you back to harmony, to base, to homeostasis. Sometimes knowing a diagnosis gives you a label. And when you take on that label, you become very disempowered.
The victim.
And you become very scared. And you're not that you're not experiencing stuff, but again, it's very hard to shake the label when you've been branded your diagnosis. And people love talking about it. They love joining others into their diagnosis. And it's like, you're just in a state. Stop. Like, it's okay. You're just at this point, at this time. Yeah. You can change this, but they don't feel like they can. And that's the first step in healing.
It's a pattern.
First step in healing is agreeing that you're not your diagnosis. Like, that's step number one. Once you accept that, boom, now the floodgates open to what's possible. Mm-hmm. Because again, we named it so we could code it and so we could treat it. Yeah. So that treatment and coding doesn't really have anything to do with health. Like it just doesn't. And they'll come up with so many other names and diagnoses. Like, stop. And everybody loves when they come in. I don't even ask about them. And I'm in training and stuff, right? So like when they come in, how's the weekend? How's it going? All right, face down on the table, adjust if you need it, get up, we go. I do not bring attention to what it is. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, actually, geez, I was able to walk 7 miles at Torrey Pines and my feet didn't lock up as much as interesting. But if I bring up, how are the feet? Oh, yeah. Then they go on this string of events and I'm like, we got to break that first and foremost, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about stem cell, we talked about surgery. Actually, you know what I didn't ask you?
Talk to me.
When is surgery necessity? When do you get surgery?
So there's a limitation in matter to an extent. Even if a ligament is 2 pieces, I've had many athletes that had no ACL, tore their ACL, chose to not go the surgery route, adapted to this crazy level of function, didn't need an ACL. Like, the body will adapt. Right. The amount of work and consistency and discipline that was necessary, is that possible for everybody? Possible, but I don't know if it's probable if you have a family and a job or other extenuating circumstances. So you have to understand that no matter where you're at, surgery is always a choice. A choice to an extent that a bone's not sticking out of you. You don't have a pole sticking through your body. Like life-threatening, immediate, traumatic, right? We're talking about injuries that you can kind of have, go home and think about it. Sure. Type injuries, you know? But I stated this the other day with a gentleman. Shows me his hip x-ray. Not the worst I've seen that people have healed from, which I said, I'm like, oh, that's not that bad. What? The surgeon made it. I know. They have to. You know, that's how they look at things. If you can bring in all these elements to get your body in a different environment that it can level up and adapt to that, you can come back from this. It's going to be a long process. Does that sound like something you can put into your life right now? and the guy's like, because he wanted to heal. He's like, let me see. Let's give this a shot. And they'll go into it, and then they realize, no, because healing's 24/7. Yeah. Right? It's an all-the-time thing. You're always thinking about things you can do. Okay, thank you that we have the technology to perform some of the surgeries we have, right? And so he goes in, gets a replacement, or goes in and gets something mended. Now guess what? You coming out of the surgery, same exact approach as you were before it. Yeah. You're just at a different state. But now you have to heal from 2 things, and you need to understand that. Your previous state of being that caused the injury in the first place. Correct. And then this trauma from the surgery itself.
Because the nervous system, the body, everything's going to have to adapt to that.
It remembers that. It has Correct. A PTSD imprinted on it for that event, just like death and depression.
A lot of people go through surgery, and this has happened to family members of mine. They expect the surgery to fix everything and then to walk out of there and be healed. The surgeon might tell them it's a 2-week recovery, and they think after 2 weeks they're good. Right. It's not how it works. Right. I mean, maybe for a percentage of the population, maybe they're okay for a little bit, but for the majority of us, you have to work at that.
You got to get back on it. You just bought yourself an extension to do your taxes, but you still got to do your taxes.
Yeah, it's going to happen. That guy's coming to collect. Okay, so
tax day.
That's right. In fact, actually, the reason we started late, I just want everybody to know. I sent an email. I said, we'll be going live at 12 p.m. We're in San Diego, so it's like, okay, we got to calculate Mountain Standard Time in there. So I'm thinking 1 p.m. we're going live. Tommy's like, I'm going to go to the post office. I'll be right back. This was at 12:15.
It should have taken 11 minutes. It should have taken 11 minutes.
It took us a good hour. So anyways, sorry for the late start.
Sorry.
But we're happy you joined us anyway. Okay, enough of that. A couple more questions for you and we're done. Number one movie. What's your favorite movie?
Outstanding question. So we've got the movie Contact with one Jodie Foster.
First off, Tommy is the movie master, and he's got a 2-bedroom place over here, and one of the bedrooms he's going to convert into his own movie theater.
I'm going to do it to a theater on the cheap. Okay. There's a life hacker, and it's like do a theater. So I'm going to do a theater. So if you're in Encinitas and you want to watch a movie with me, come on in. But you got to bring the snacks. All right, so Contact, Jodie Foster. She listens to radio waves of space. She's trying to contact. 90s, right? Trying to contact other intelligent beings, and she gets a message back from space, right, that has intelligence behind it. And there's layers and levels, and it's got instructions on how to build an apparatus that could bring us to another. And it challenges just religion and purpose and family and love and. Like in the face of that, so, like you believe something so hard, but everything around you is so hard to prove it, but you still believe it. Like I love that, and I get goosebumps right now talking about it because it touches upon the most extreme level of I believe this to be right. I have nothing that proves otherwise, and that because we don't have some substantial proof doesn't mean that's not the way it is. We just maybe can't prove it right now. But to have somebody believe in something just really, it gets me going. Anyway, Contact, Tom Skerritt, Matthew McConaughey, and Jodie Foster. Done.
Okay. All right, and best musician.
Okay. So this is not a simple answer there, bud.
Okay.
But what we got, I think the best music is nature, like it's running water, the ocean, rain, wind through pine, just outdoor. It just, like it sings to me.
Okay.
If we're going to man-made instrument and notes and everything else.
I know you like this because I've been to the dueling piano bars with you before.
Oh, wait for it. I know, that's part of my answer. So I got to go through, like, if I'm having a dinner party, who's going to play at my dinner party? Because there's different stages. Chopin is playing while we're just having, like, sipping on cocktails and just mingling, right? Then you got Cole Porter in this other room.
What is Chopin?
Chopin.
Is that classical?
It's classical.
My parents are classical musicians, and I don't know that. How do you spell Chopin?
All right, Chopin. Don't ask me to spell Frederick. Then we got Cole Porter with some uppity 1920s kind of fun stuff. Then you got Johnny Cash just getting you hungry for the meal. Okay, Johnny Cash is playing. Then you got Van Morrison for when we're eating.
Okay.
Sinatra pops in for dessert, and they're all here, by the way.
Okay.
All right. Just so you're
Frank,
aware.
come on over.
Then afterwards, we've got 80s Madonna opening up for Billy Joel, Elton John, dueling pianos, face to face. And then we make our way outside, because we live on the beach, by the way, in this fantasy. We live on the beach, and we go to a fireside, oceanside, back and forth with Jack Johnson and Dave Matthews. And they're just, and then Michael Franti sings us home. And then that's it. There it is.
Is this Encinitas or Solana Beach? Or
Dude, it's wherever, man. Okay, we could be in Uruguay.
All right. Well, that was a good answer. That's way better than I thought it was going to be. Yes. And then last great book you've read. Most recent great book.
Fantastic book by Angela Hanscom called Balanced and Barefoot.
Balanced and Barefoot.
I call it like it's the prequel to my book, because my book starts at like the 8-year-old, the 7 or 8-year-old. Well, what's supposed to happen from 0 to 8? Because I'm seeing problems in my office, as I'm sure you are, in certain adults or teens, where there's something going on from 0 to 8 that they could address. She's the expert in that field, so I reached out to her. Fantastic book on how to approach 0 to 8 and letting kids move and explore their bodies to develop them these foundations for later on, whether it be sports or reading and writing and comprehension and being able to sit still in class. Like, they have to be trained to be able to do that. And she gets into the benefits of outdoor play, unorganized play, like just observed but not adult involved. Sure. Just let kids figure this stuff out, and when they are able to take risks and are able to decide hierarchies and use their creativity. It's stuff you and I remember.
Absolutely.
Like big time. When we were outside, we knew how to pick the teams. We knew what the rules were. We knew when to back off, when to push more. It's the perfect set of reps and sets. It's the perfect, plus you got kids going outside, and we all could use a little more outdoors time. So that's it.
All right, and last question. How do people, and I'm going to go grab this in a second.
Sure.
How do people find out about you and then also your book?
So the best website to go to, it's the book landing page. It's called don'tcutmykid.com. And that's where you'll find everything from my work website to all the places you can purchase the book from, the coverage we've gotten so far. That's the book right there. So don'tcutmykid.com.
It's a sports parent survival guide. And it's about kids, but you could take this material and transfer it to an adult without just changing the words in terms of kids to adults, correct?
Literally, the guy on Fox in San Diego last week, Troy Hirsch, asked me that on air. He goes, now could this be for the weekend warrior, the 40, 50-year-old? I'm like, absolutely, go in through it, because that's what he is.
Yeah.
He rides dirt bikes and water skis and does all his other things. It's principles, and principles will never go away. They're laws. So as soon as we're coming out to our last breath, those principles apply to all of us, regardless of whether you play sport or not.
Okay. And if you guys have any more questions, this is a great friend of mine, someone I treasure and hold very highly. So if you ever have any questions about him, want to know more, by all means ask me and I'll put you in contact with him. Otherwise, go to his website. Make sure you get this book because it's an amazing book. And if you have any more comments or questions, put them down below and we'll make sure we answer them. Thanks for watching.
Done. Take care.